Thank you guys for joining me here for the last segment of today's show. Looking ahead a little bit to the divisional round here in today's show. Not really previewing or anything like that, but I just felt like it was interesting looking at these matchups a little bit ahead of things and realizing that we have three rematches going on in this phase of the playoffs, right? Out of all the matchups, right? Out of all four of the matchups, three of them have two teams that have already played against each other this season. Six teams that are familiar, very familiar with their opponents. So I thought that was pretty interesting. You look at Kansas City and Philadelphia in their respective matchups, right? Both of them won the first time around, and now both of them are going to play that same team at home this time, right? The Chiefs play the Texans in Arrowhead during the regular season. Now they have the opportunity of playing them again at home in the playoffs. And for Philadelphia, they played the first game against the Rams in Los Angeles, right? And they ran all over them. And now they have the opportunity of playing them again in the comfort of their own home. So that's, going to have an effect on the games, obviously. And the only one that's not like that is Baltimore and Buffalo, because Baltimore won the first game at home, but now they're going to be playing in Buffalo, where obviously the Bills have not lost once in their home stadium this year. So there's a lot to pick off from these matchups, right? Which makes it so much more interesting. But going through each team, going through each scenario, I'm just going to provide one thing that is either going to help each one of these teams, win again, or get some sort of revenge and win this time if they lost the first matchup. So we're going to start off talking about the Texans and the Kansas City Chiefs. For the Texans, one thing that I think they need to do to win this time around is just play cleaner football. And I know that sounds like a general statement, right? Everybody wants to do that. But it's not necessarily just clean, but I would just say more efficient, a more efficient level of football, a more mature approach to these games, right? Because they didn't necessarily show that against the Chargers, where they had six penalties and three giveaways in that game. But they were fortunate enough to have Justin Herbert turn the ball over more than they did, and also just have the Chargers and their defense really get after Justin Herbert as well. So it's not like they didn't make mistakes. They certainly made a good amount of mistakes in this game, but it's just the fact that the Chargers made a lot more. So they didn't necessarily play the cleanest of games, and they're gonna have to really ramp that up to like a 10 or even like an 11, right? Because you're going up against one of, if not the team that hardly ever hurts themselves, especially at this point of the season in Kansas City, especially in Arrowhead as well, right? Because you talk about just hurting yourself and playing sloppy football. In their first game in Arrowhead as well, it was only a 27-19 game, but we saw some of the same mistakes, right? The Texans were called for 6 penalties, where the Chiefs were only called for 2. There was only 2 giveaways, both by the Houston Texans, and 0 from the Kansas City Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes was only sacked 1 time, and the Texans only ran for 57 yards in their last game against the Chiefs. So being efficient, being on your X's and O's, crossing your T's and dotting your I's. I know it sounds meticulous, and I know it sounds like almost impossible to be perfect, and it kind of sounds like I'm asking them to do that, but try and avoid those situations where you take a unwarranted risk or just an unnecessary penalty, or you're just not playing smart, or you're not being very cerebral about the game. All aspects of football are covered when you're trying to knock off the Super Bowl champion as well. So for the Texans, just make sure everything is accounted for. And the Chiefs just might be a better team, but in games like this, it's definitely a lot more reassuring when you know that you did your best to not hurt yourself in this game, right? And if they just beat you, and you played a clean game, that's all right. But you definitely don't want to look back and think that, oh, we had 8 penalties and we gave the ball away one time. And usually that one time hurts you against Patrick Mahomes. So making sure to cut all those things out will be huge. And for the Chiefs, I think it's quite evident that the Texans defense really relies on their pass rush. Their pass rush really disrupted things for the Chargers, and just making sure, in a way, kind of like we mentioned with the Bills going into this game or their pass game against the Broncos, just making sure that pass rush has other things to worry about, not just getting after Patrick Mahomes, because that's something that everyone's going to have to worry about, but making sure that you get them in situations where you're running the ball efficiently, not getting yourself in 3rd and 8s, 3rd and 10s, and things like that. Making Will Anderson, Danielle Hunter, Danico Autry, and these guys defend the run. Don't just take an extra step wider because you think you're just going to rush the passer all day. Make them stay in their gaps and make them tackle and kind of wear them down that way. And not only in the running game, but other responsibilities you could throw at them, like in pass coverage or making sure that they account for, different responsibilities in zone coverage where, they got to account for Travis Kelce, that they move all over the place and create matchups, right? There might be an opportunity where, one of these edge rushers might have to account for Travis Kelce if nobody else is doing it and things like that, right? Making sure that they are not just focused on rushing the passer, right? Disrupt their game that way. And also, in that respect, especially with the fact that in their last matchup, Joe Mixon didn't really have that much of an impact. This Houston Texans team, if they're going to win this game, they're going to need those guys to get after Patrick and things like that, right? Get after him and make sure that they're in his face. And if you can get a turnover that way, that's great for the visiting team. But really, for the Kansas City Chiefs, just limiting those splash plays, right? Holding on to the ball and making the Texans, in a way, also play the full 60 minutes, right? And that's where the Chiefs usually get teams to kind of fall off the track, is where they just outlast them. And they play as clean a football as anybody, like I said. So making sure that they're able to do that and really taking that pass rush away is going to be huge for them to win this matchup yet again. But moving on to the other game between the Rams and the Philadelphia Eagles, right? For the Rams, last game they focused a lot on getting after Sam Darnold, and I think that was evident, right? Like the Lions did, right? Getting after him, getting in his face, and putting a lot of pressure on him, right? But this time around, going up against the Eagles, I think for them, it's all about Saquon. It's all about those guys making sure Saquon doesn't, break out a 30-yard run in or through their gap that they're supposed to be in, right? Making sure that Saquon's not the one that just beats you on his own. And it's tough when they have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, right, and Jalen Hurts who could take off. But I think in this game it's more than important to just limit Saquon and really have him as the guy to not beat you, because I'd like to see Jalen Hurts, have an opportunity to try and beat you, right? I mean, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are great. They definitely help out in that regard. But I think once you get to the crucial plays, like in the red zone and things like that, if the Rams fully focus on taking Saquon away and he's just not getting anything all game, and you really make Jalen beat you with his arm, he could pick you apart. He could go up and down the field with drives, just throwing the ball. He's a good quarterback, right? Obviously, but once you get into those tight areas, once you get into the red zone, and those throws from Jalen have to be super accurate, right? If they play like a good zone coverage in the red zone, then you're forcing Jalen to be very accurate and very, I guess, perfect in a way in some of these throws. And more often than not, a quarterback is not going to be able to keep that up for the majority of the game. And the Eagles, I'm sure, are still going to run the ball, but or at least try to. But if you're the Rams, really limit that and take that away. And if you could play great coverage, great zones in the red zone and just hold the Eagles to field goals instead of touchdowns, and just focus on Saquon more so than not, I think they're going to have a good opportunity, especially with the kind of offense that they have. So taking away Saquon and making Jalen Hurts try and beat you, I think is their best opportunity to win this game. And then on the other side of things, looking at the Eagles side and how they could get another win over the Rams, I think for them is making sure that they are on Matthew Stafford all day long, that their pass rush is getting to him very, very quickly. Again, easier said than done, but Matthew Stafford, passing wise, I think, we saw it a lot last game where he could just beat you with his arms. So knowing that that's a huge part of their game alongside with Puka and Cooper Kupp and all those sort of guys, right? It seems like that's their MO. So taking them off their usual sort of rhythm and things like that and making Stafford throw it quicker or throwing off his rhythm and things like that, they have the guys to do it in man coverage. So if you got to bring another guy, blitz Matthew Stafford, he's not going to take off anywhere really. So you got a good opportunity with guys like Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Josh Sweat, and those guys to get after Matthew Stafford. And if you do that and you get them in second and third and longs, because their defensive line is very good enough to hold Kyren Williams down, I think. They're good enough to do that. So if they're able to keep Kyren in check a little bit, but really mainly focus on Matthew Stafford with the kind of corners that they have, I think that'll be a great starting point where they could really do that. And if they're able to be successful with that, then I think they'd be in a good spot to win this game on when is it? Is it on Sunday? I believe it's on Sunday. So that's that matchup. And then just looking at the last two teams here, looking at the Baltimore Ravens, what I'd like to see them do is take more of an advantage of those one-on-one matchups that I feel like the Buffalo Bills are going to give them on Sunday, the last game on Sunday, right? Because last time, all the wide receivers only caught one pass. All of them only caught one pass outside of Justice Hill. And it was really all about Derrick Henry, right? He took over that game. The running game took over. And they just outmuscled the Bills. So for the Bills this time around, it's going to help out a lot that Matt Milano's back for them. And they're just going to have to get out of that comfort zone of playing zone and really load that box up very heavy. And it's going to force you into man coverage a lot of the times, right? But I feel like taking away Derrick and not having him just solely beat you, sort of like Saquon, I think would be the way I would approach things if I was thinking like the Bills, right? I feel like they're going to load up that box and try and take him away, unlike last time. So if they do that, for the Baltimore Ravens to win this game, I think, take advantage of that. That the Bills aren't really accustomed to being in man coverage. They do prefer zone more often than not. And I know you might not have Zay Flowers for this game, but take advantage of someone trying to cover Isaiah Likely one-on-one, trying to cover Mark Andrews one-on-one, or even Rashad Bateman. Those are good matchups that I think still favor the Baltimore Ravens. So while Buffalo is focused on taking away Derrick Henry, and they might be successful with that, with how many bodies they have around the offensive line, you're going to have good matchups on the outside. So making sure that Lamar is able to be accurate and take advantage of those one-on-ones, I think they kind of have an edge there as well. So that's what I'd like to see the Ravens do. But the last team we have on here is obviously the Bills. And the way I think that they can change something to win this time around is like spreading the Baltimore defense out as much as they possibly can. Make it so that they have more defensive backs out there. Make it so that they're not just loading up the box in and around Josh Allen. Because the Ravens, I feel like the Ravens want to try and outmuscle you. They want that hard-nosed, heavy personnel out there to try and beat you that way. I think that plays more to their style. More power over finesse, heavy formations, like I said. I think that's what the Ravens ideally want to do and where I feel like they are most comfortable. But with all the options that the Bills have, like like Keon, Amari Cooper, Khalil Shakir, both their tight ends, even the running backs that they have out there, spread them out as wide as possible and, have them have that Ravens defense worry about a lot of guys in the passing game rather than just being in a condensed area. Because in a condensed area, I feel like the Ravens are a lot more successful, just out-muscling you. But in terms of a spread offense, having 4 wide receivers out there or just 4 guys out wide and just spread out all over the field, it forces the Ravens to be a bit more disciplined when it comes to their zones or their assignments and things like that. And not only that, but I think there's just more space for throws to be made from Josh Allen, and not only for him passing-wise, but running the ball as well. You don't want everybody to be condensed when you have a guy the size of Josh Allen trying to run the ball. There's going to be nowhere to go. So if you also spread everybody out in the passing game, it gives Josh a lot more room to look through all of his reads, and if no one's there, there's a lot more space for him to just take off and run. I feel like they didn't do that enough in their first game. So spread this defense out a lot. Make sure that they're disciplined in their assignments, and if not, you can make some throws, or you could just take off if you're Josh Allen and really take control of this game. That's, in my mind, what I feel like each one of these teams can do to either win again or get some sort of revenge from their first matchup. So we're going to dive into these matchups a lot more over the next couple of days. But for right now, that is going to be it for this show. I want to thank you guys for joining me on today's episode. And please remember to like, follow, and subscribe to the show, as well as following the network on all forms of social media. If you want to see more of the Chip Shot Football podcast, please check out the GSMC Sports Network channel and the GSMC Podcast Network channel on YouTube, obviously, where you can see more content around the NFL, and with us, more breaking news, coverage, previews, breakdowns, and all just different coverages around different stories around the NFL. Again, with me, Manny Maradiaga, as your host. Thanking you guys again for joining me, and I'll be back here again tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and I would like to see all you guys join me again tomorrow. Let's
go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to